My African violets were looking particularly vibrant that Tuesday morning, their fuzzy leaves a deep forest green, the blossoms like tiny velvet jewels in shades of purple and pink. I had just finished watering them, the morning sun streaming through the lace-curtained window of my living room, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. It was a peaceful moment, the kind I had come to cherish in the 5 years since my Arthur passed. My gaze drifted along the familiar titles on the bookshelf, a habit ingrained from years of loving books. Dickens, Austen, Wharton, and then something else, something that did not belong. Tucked between a hefty copy of Bleak House and David Copperfield, almost invisible against the dark spines, was a tiny cylindrical object, black, with a minuscule, almost imperceptible lens. My breath caught in my throat. I leaned closer, my heart beginning a frantic, painful rhythm against my ribs. It was a camera. A miniature camera so small it was clearly designed to be hidden, to spy. A chill, colder than any winter draft, snaked down my spine. My hand reaching out trembled. I touched it, and it was cold, impersonal. This was not some forgotten gadget. This was deliberate. This was a violation. My mind raced, a chaotic jumble of disbelief and dawning, horrifying certainty. Who? Why? And then, like a shard of ice piercing my heart, the answer began to form, unwanted but undeniable. My own son, Robert. It had to be. No one else had such regular access to my home. No one else had been acting so strangely. The pain was a physical thing, a crushing weight on my chest that made it hard to breathe. Robert, my only child, the boy I had nursed through fevers, whose scraped knees I had bandaged, whose triumphs I had celebrated with a full heart. That he, my own flesh and blood, would stoop to this, to planting a secret eye in the sanctuary of my home, the home I had shared with his father. It was a betrayal so profound it threatened to shatter the carefully constructed peace I had built around myself. What had I done to deserve this? What had happened to my son? The questions echoed in the sudden, deafening silence of the room, a room that no longer felt like my own. If you are listening to this story, thank you so much for being here. Let us know where you are joining us from in the world, and do not forget to subscribe to become part of our growing community. My life with Arthur had been simple, yet rich in its own way. He was a man of quiet habits and deep affections, a planner, always thinking of the future. "Eleanor," he would say, his hand covering mine as we sat on the porch swing in the evenings, "I want to make sure you are comfortable, always." He worked hard as an accountant for a small local firm, diligently saving, investing wisely, but cautiously. We never lived extravagantly. Our joys were found in our garden, in books, in quiet evenings together, in watching Robert grow. After Arthur passed, I discovered just how meticulous his planning had been. There was enough, a comfortable cushion that allowed me to live in our home, to pay my bills, to not be a burden. It was not millions, not by any means, but it was security, and for that, I was profoundly grateful. My days had settled into a gentle rhythm. I tended my garden. Those African violets were my pride, a legacy from my own mother. I read voraciously, losing myself in worlds created by authors long gone. I managed my finances with the same prudence Arthur had taught me. It was a quiet life, and yes, at times, a lonely one. The silence of the house could be heavy, filled with the ghosts of laughter and shared whispers. But it was also a life of independence, of dignity. My deepest desire was simply for that to continue, to live out my years in peace, respected, not as a burden, but as Eleanor. My underlying fear, the one that sometimes surfaced in the small hours of the night, was of losing that autonomy, of being seen as frail, forgetful, incompetent, of having my choices taken away from me. This house, this small two-story home with its gabled roof and slightly overgrown rose bushes, was more than just bricks and mortar. It was a repository of memories. Every worn spot on the armchair in the living room, every chipped teacup in the china cabinet, every creak of the floorboards whispered stories of our life together. Arthur's presence was still here, in the scent of pipe tobacco that faintly clung to his old study, in the books he loved, in the sturdy oak tree he planted in the backyard the year Robert was born. It was my sanctuary. Or so I had thought. Robert had always been a good son, if perhaps a little self-absorbed as he grew older and built his own life. He called regularly, visited on holidays. After his first marriage ended, a messy affair that left him somewhat adrift, I worried. Then about a year ago, he announced he was marrying again. Tiffany. She was much younger than Robert, in her late 20s or perhaps early 30s, with bright blonde hair, a dazzling smile, and a way of speaking that was both overly sweet and somehow cloying. She was a whirlwind of energy, and Robert seemed utterly besotted. I tried to like her, for Robert's sake. But from the beginning, there was something about Tiffany that set my teeth on edge. Her eyes, a pale, piercing blue, had an unsettling intensity. They would skim over my furniture, my few pieces of good jewelry, linger on the portrait of Arthur in the hallway, as if she were taking inventory, assessing value. Her questions at first seemed innocent enough, the kind of polite inquiries a new daughter-in-law might make. "Oh, Eleanor, this is such a lovely house. Arthur must have done very well for himself." Or, "Robert mentioned his father was so smart with money. He must have left you very secure." I would offer polite, vague answers. "Arthur was a good provider," I would say, or "we lived comfortably." But Tiffany was persistent. Her charm felt like a veneer, poorly applied over something hard and grasping. I remember one afternoon, she picked up a small silver locket from my dresser, a gift from Arthur. "This is so quaint," she said, her thumb rubbing the engraving. "Is it very old? Valuable?" There was a hunger in her voice that I found distasteful. I began to feel a subtle unease, a feeling I initially dismissed as my own oversensitivity, perhaps a natural reluctance to welcome a stranger so quickly into the family fold. Then, a few months ago, Robert started to change. It began with small things. He would call, and his tone would be different, a little strained. "Mom," he said one day, his voice unnervingly casual, "are you sure you are managing okay with all the bills? Things are getting so expensive these days." I assured him I was perfectly fine. A week later, it was Tiffany on the line, her voice dripping with synthetic concern. "Eleanor, darling, Robert and I were just talking. We think maybe you should have someone help you with your finances, just to take the load off, you know, someone you trust, like Robert." The suggestions became more frequent, more pointed. Robert brought up the idea of me selling the house. "It is a big place for one person, Mom," he said, avoiding my eyes. "You could move into a nice, smaller apartment, something easier to manage. And Tiffany and we could look after the proceeds from the sale for you. Invest it properly." A chill settled deep in my bones. "Robert," I said, my voice firmer than I intended, "this is my home. I have no intention of selling it, and I am perfectly capable of managing my own affairs." He looked flustered, almost angry, a flicker of impatience in his eyes that I had never seen directed at me before. Tiffany, who was with him that day, placed a soothing hand on his arm. Her smile, however, was tight, her gaze sharp as it met mine. "Of course, Eleanor," she cooed. "We just worry about you." But it did not feel like worry. It felt like pressure. It felt like they were circling, waiting. The warmth I once felt from Robert, the easy affection, was being replaced by a calculating coolness that frightened me. I saw them exchange knowing glances when they thought I was not looking. A sense of dread began to coil in my stomach. And then, that Tuesday morning, the camera, the little black eye staring out from between my beloved books. The full weight of their intentions, their plot, crashed down on me. They were not just suggesting, they were actively seeking something, trying to find evidence for a narrative they were constructing. My supposed wealth, my supposed decline. The initial shock gave way to a wave of icy fury. My hands, which had been trembling, stilled. My mind, moments before a whirlwind of pain and confusion, sharpened with a sudden, startling clarity. They thought I was a doddering old fool, easily manipulated, easily dismissed. They thought they could violate my home, my privacy, my very life without consequence. I did not confront them. Not yet. That would have been too easy, too predictable. It would have given them the chance to deny, to obfuscate, to play the concerned family. No. If they wanted to play a game of deception, then I would play too. But I would play by my own rules. That very night, I sat down at Arthur's old desktop computer, the one I mostly used for emails and looking up gardening tips. I typed miniature hidden cameras into the search bar. A new world opened up to me. A world of tiny lenses, wireless connections, and remote recordings. A world I was about to enter. My decision was made. I would not be a passive victim in their scheme. I would fight deceit with quiet intelligence. I would uncover the full truth, no matter how ugly. They thought I was just a frail old woman, easily confused, easily controlled. They had no idea who they were dealing with. What would you have done if you found that camera? Would you have screamed, cried, or would you have started planning your own defense? Let me know in the comments. The next few days were a blur of clandestine activity. I ordered a set of my own cameras, even smaller, more discreet than the one I had found. They arrived in a plain brown box, and I secreted them away in my knitting basket until I had a chance to study the instructions. Learning to use them was a challenge. The print on the manuals was tiny, the technology unfamiliar. There were moments of frustration when I wanted to throw the little gadgets across the room. But the image of that lens on my bookshelf, the memory of Robert's changed demeanor, of Tiffany's avaricious gaze, spurred me on. I spent hours hunched over the laptop, watching tutorial videos, practicing with the settings, figuring out the best angles, the longest battery life. I felt a strange mix of fear and exhilaration, like a spy in my own life. This was my secret war. I found 2 more of their cameras. One was crudely taped beneath the kitchen counter, angled towards the table where I ate my meals and paid my bills. Another, even more unsettling, was tucked behind a small framed photograph of Arthur on my bedside table. The audacity of it, to invade even the privacy of my bedroom, fueled my resolve. I learned to be careful, to act normal. I avoided those areas when I had to make a private phone call, usually to my old friend Martha, or when I simply wanted to talk to myself, a habit of widows. I continued my daily routine, watering my plants, reading my books, perhaps even humming a little louder than usual. Sometimes, when Robert and Tiffany visited, I would feign a moment of forgetfulness, misplacing my glasses or momentarily forgetting a name, just to see their reaction. They would exchange those quick, knowing glances, Tiffany's lips curving into a small, satisfied smile. It was all I could do not to react, to keep the mask of benign confusion in place. Inside, a cold anger was building. My first successful recordings were a revelation. I had placed one of my tiny cameras, disguised as a decorative stone, amongst the plants on the windowsill overlooking the driveway. Another was nestled in a bowl of potpourri on the hall table, covering the front door and the living room entrance. A third, my most ingenious placement, was hidden inside an old, non-functioning clock on the mantelpiece in the living room, giving me a clear view of the entire space. One afternoon, I deliberately went out for my weekly grocery shopping at my usual time. I had a feeling they might use my absence. When I returned and later reviewed the footage from the mantelpiece clock, my blood ran cold, even as a grim sense of vindication settled in. The footage showed Robert and Tiffany letting themselves in with the key I had given Robert years ago, a key I now bitterly regretted. They moved through my living room like invaders, opening drawers, rifling through papers on Arthur's old desk. Tiffany's voice was sharp, impatient. "She has to have it hidden somewhere, Robert." "Financial statements, a will, anything. Your father was not a fool. He would have left her millions, not just this. This pittance of a pension and some bonds." Robert, my son, sounded weak, easily led. "Maybe you are right, Tiff. She is definitely getting more confused. I asked her about that investment account Arthur had, and she looked completely blank. We need to protect her. And her assets, of course." His hypocrisy was galling. "Exactly," Tiffany said, her voice smooth as silk. "We need to talk to that lawyer, Henderson. Get him on our side. If we can show she is mentally incompetent, we can get power of attorney. It is for her own good, really." I watched them, two vultures picking over what they imagined to be a feast. My hand clenched into a fist. "Incompetent, am I?" I whispered to the screen, the image of their greedy faces swimming before my eyes. So that was their game. Not just to find money, but to strip me of my autonomy, to have me declared unfit to manage my own life. The sheer, calculated cruelty of it took my breath away, but with the anger came a steely resolve. They were laying their cards on the table, and I was recording every single one. The following weeks were a strange dance of normalcy and deception. Tiffany, emboldened, escalated her campaign to document my supposed senility. She would visit, all sweetness and light, and then, when she thought I was not paying attention, she would move my keys from the hook by the door to the fruit bowl in the kitchen. Later, she would help me find them, tutting sympathetically. "Oh, Eleanor, you really must be more careful. What if you needed to get out in an emergency?" She would ask me rapid-fire questions, what I had for breakfast, the name of the current mayor, the date. And when I inevitably stumbled or paused, caught off guard by the interrogation, she would make a small, sorrowful clicking sound with her tongue, often while subtly angling her phone towards me, no doubt recording. Robert, meanwhile, grew more distant. When he did speak to me, it was with a kind of patronizing pity that set my nerves on edge. "Mom, are you feeling all right? You seem a bit vague today." Or, "Let me help you with that, Mom. It looks a bit complicated for you." Each word was a small, deliberate cut. There were moments, usually late at night, when the weight of it all threatened to crush me. I would sit in Arthur's armchair, looking through old photo albums. Robert as a baby, chubby and smiling. Robert on his first day of school, his small hand clutching mine, his eyes wide with a mixture of excitement and fear. Robert graduating from college, so full of promise. Where had that boy gone? Had Tiffany so completely poisoned his mind? Or had this greed, this weakness, always been there, lurking beneath the surface? I wept for the son I seemed to have lost, for the happy memories that now felt tainted. But these moments of grief did not weaken my resolve. If anything, they strengthened it. I would not let Tiffany and the stranger my son had become destroy everything Arthur and I had built, everything I held dear. One Wednesday afternoon, Robert came over alone. He said Tiffany was at a spa day with friends, and he wanted to fix the leaky faucet in my kitchen sink, a task he had been promising to do for weeks. I thanked him, a little surprised by the unsolicited offer. While he was ostensibly clanking away under the sink, he made a series of phone calls from the living room, right in view of my mantelpiece clock camera. I watched the footage later that evening, my heart a cold, hard knot in my chest. The first call was clearly to Tiffany. His voice was hushed, agitated. "No, I told you, Mom does not suspect a thing. She was asking about Aunt Carol again, the one who died 10 years ago. She is definitely losing it. Just be patient. Henderson said we need more proof, but it is building." He listened for a moment, then, all right. I will try to find her bank statements while I am here. Love you." Love you. The words sounded hollow, rehearsed. He hung up, paced for a moment, then made another call. This time, his entire demeanor changed. His voice softened, became intimate, almost caressing. "Sarah, baby, I miss you too," he murmured, his back partially to the camera, but his profile, the tender expression on his face, was clear. "Yes, it is taking longer than I thought. This whole thing with my mother, it is complicated." A pause. "Just a little more time, Sarah, and we can be together properly like we planned. She has to have the money hidden somewhere. Arthur was too smart not to leave a bundle." Another pause, then a low chuckle. "Tiffany? Do not worry about Tiffany. She is just a means to an end. You are the one I want, Sarah. You know that." He then sent a series of text messages, his thumbs flying across the screen of his phone, a foolish, lovesick smile on his face. The camera caught glimpses of the screen, hearts, kisses, promises of a future together. I sat there, stunned into silence. My own son, not only plotting against me with his wife, but also plotting against his wife with another woman, using both of us. The sheer, unadulterated cynicism of it was breathtaking. He was a viper, a user, a man devoid of loyalty or genuine affection for anyone but himself, and this phantom fortune he believed I possessed. Any lingering shred of maternal sympathy, any faint hope that I could somehow reach the Robert I once knew, withered and died in that moment. This was not a son led astray. This was a man rotten to the core. And he had just handed me the weapon that would ensure his complete and utter destruction. "Oh, Robert," I whispered to the silent screen, a strange, cold calm settling over me. "You truly have no idea what you have just done." I realized then that I had everything I needed, more than enough. My course of action became crystal clear. I would not confront them prematurely. I would let them walk into the trap they had so carefully prepared for me. I would let them stage their little intervention, present their evidence, and then I would present mine. I began to meticulously organize the video clips, saving them to a new flash drive, labeling each one with dates and descriptions. Robert and Tiffany installing camera in bookshelf. Conversation regarding incompetence plan. Tiffany staging stove incident, and the pièce de résistance. Robert's call to Sarah, texts. I even learned how to use a simple video editing program to add captions to the text messages, making them large and clear. I was no longer just a grieving widow or a confused old woman. I was an archivist of their deceit, the director of their downfall. My sadness was still there, a dull ache in the background. But it was now overlaid with a grim, almost surgical determination. A few days later, Tiffany called, her voice oozing false sympathy. "Eleanor, dear," she began, "Robert and I have been so worried about you. We have decided to have a little family meeting just to discuss your well-being, to make sure you have all the support you need. It will be here, at your house, in 2 weeks, on Saturday. We have asked a lovely gentleman, a lawyer named Mr. Henderson, to join us. He specializes in helping families make arrangements." The unspoken threat hung heavy in the air. "Oh," I said, injecting a note of slight confusion into my voice. "A lawyer? Is that really necessary, dear?" "Just a precaution, Eleanor," Tiffany said smoothly, "to make sure everything is handled properly. For your benefit, of course." "Well, all right then, Tiffany," I said, feigning resignation, "if you think it is best." In the 2 weeks leading up to the intervention, their visits increased. Their concern became almost suffocating. Tiffany would find the television remote in the refrigerator, clucking about my absent-mindedness, after, of course, placing it there herself when I was in another room. Robert would ask me deliberately confusing questions about current events, nodding sadly when I hesitated. I played my part. I allowed myself to appear flustered, a little disoriented. I even forgot Robert's upcoming birthday, only to remember with an apology that I hoped sounded convincingly addled. They lapped it up, their confidence growing with each fabricated incident. They were so sure of themselves, so convinced of my decline. The night before the scheduled meeting, I sat alone in my living room. The compiled evidence was on the flash drive, safely tucked into my purse. Arthur's old laptop was ready. Yet, a wave of profound sorrow washed over me. Was this victory worth it? Was the exposure of my son, the complete and utter demolition of what was left of our family, truly the only way? I thought of Arthur, of the pride he had in Robert, of the dreams he had for our family. The loneliness of my position felt immense. For a fleeting moment, I considered simply asking them to leave my life, to show them a single clip, and demand they never return, without the public humiliation. What if my technology failed? What if they somehow twisted my evidence, painted me as the manipulative one? Then, I forced myself to rewatch one key clip. Tiffany's voice, cold and callous, as she spoke to Robert, unaware my little camera in the potpourri was recording them in the hallway as they were leaving one evening. "Once she is in the home and we have control of the money, we can finally start living. And if she complains, who will believe a senile old woman?" Her dismissive laugh echoed in my quiet living room. Next, I played Robert's saccharine call to Sarah, his voice dripping with false love, as he spoke of me as an obstacle, Tiffany as a temporary inconvenience. "She is fading fast, baby. It will not be long now." The anger, clean and sharp, returned, banishing the doubt. This was not just about money, or even about my house. This was about my life, my sanity, my dignity. It was about truth and justice. Arthur, I knew, would have abhorred their deceit. He would have wanted me to fight, to protect what was rightfully mine, especially my independence. I took a deep breath, my resolve hardening like steel. "They started this," I said softly to the empty room, to the lingering scent of Arthur's pipe tobacco. "I will finish it." I double-checked the order of my video clips, ensuring the narrative would unfold with maximum impact. Tomorrow, the performance of their lives would begin. Little did they know, I had already written the ending, and they were not the stars. The morning of the intervention dawned gray and overcast, matching my mood, yet beneath the somber surface, a current of anticipation hummed. I carefully set up the large, flat-screen television in the living room, the one Arthur and I had bought to watch nature documentaries. I connected it to his old laptop. I dressed simply, in a lavender blouse and gray slacks, choosing an outfit that perhaps made me look a little more frail than I felt. When Robert, Tiffany, and a portly, smug-looking man who introduced himself as Mr. Henderson arrived precisely at 10 o'clock, I offered them tea and cookies, my hands trembling just slightly. A tremor I did not entirely feign. They exchanged satisfied glances. My apparent nervousness seemed to confirm their narrative. They settled onto my sofa, Tiffany positioning herself protectively beside Robert, Mr. Henderson opening his briefcase with an air of grave importance. The show began. Tiffany spoke first, her voice laced with a carefully rehearsed sorrow. "Eleanor, darling, Robert and I, we have been so incredibly worried about you. Your memory, it just has not been what it used to be. We are scared you might hurt yourself, or that someone might take advantage of you." Robert nodded, looking suitably concerned, though he could not quite meet my eyes. "Mom, we just want what is best for you. A little help, that is all. Someone to manage things so you do not have to worry." Then Mr. Henderson took center stage. He droned on about diminished capacity, fiduciary responsibility, and the importance of proactive estate planning. He presented a few grainy, out-of-context video clips, undoubtedly from their own cameras. There I was, looking confusedly for the keys Tiffany had hidden. There I was, apparently forgetting an appointment they had invented and then reminded me of. "As you can see, Madam Vance," he said, his tone condescending, "there are clear indicators that you require assistance in managing your affairs. For your own protection, of course, we would suggest Robert be granted power of attorney. Perhaps even explore options for a managed care facility where you would have round-the-clock support." I listened patiently, my expression carefully neutral, though inside, a storm of emotions raged. The audacity, the sheer, cold-blooded calculation of it all. When they had finally finished, when Mr. Henderson leaned back with an air of having settled the matter, I let the silence stretch for a moment. Then I cleared my throat. "Thank you," I said, my voice quiet but steady. "Thank you all for your profound concern. It is touching." I allowed myself a small, sad smile. "Before we discuss this any further, I have a few home movies I would like to share. Family memories, you could say." Robert shifted uneasily. Tiffany shot him a sharp glance, then gave me a patronizing smile. "Eleanor, dear, I am not sure this is the time for—" "Oh, but I insist," I said, picking up the television remote. "It will not take long." I clicked the first file. The large screen flickered to life. Clip number 1, clear, undeniable footage from my camera in the potpourri bowl, showing Robert and Tiffany letting themselves into my house, looking furtive. Then, footage from the bookshelf camera showing Tiffany directing Robert. "Put one in the bedroom, she probably hides her jewelry there, and make sure it covers the desk." Robert's face began to lose color. Tiffany's smile froze. Clip number 2, them in my living room, rummaging through Arthur's desk, opening drawers, sifting through papers. Tiffany's voice, sharp and clear. "There has to be more. Old people always stash cash somewhere. He could not have left her with just this little bit." Robert's reply, "Do not worry, Tiff. Once we show she is incompetent, it will all be ours. We just need Henderson to make it look legal." Mr. Henderson's smug expression vanished, replaced by a look of dawning horror. He began to fidget with his tie. Clip number 3, a compilation. Tiffany sneaking into the kitchen to turn on a stove burner, then her feigned shock as she discovered it with me later. Tiffany moving my purse, then helping me find it. Tiffany asking me confusing questions while surreptitiously recording me on her phone. Robert was now a ghastly shade of white. Tiffany's jaw was clenched, her eyes darting from the screen to me, a new dangerous light in them. And then the grand finale. Clip number 4. Robert, in my living room, on the phone. His hushed, intimate conversation with Sarah. His voice, dripping with false affection. "Sarah, baby, I miss you too. Yes, it is taking longer than I thought. This whole thing with my mother, it is complicated." Then the damning words. "Tiffany, do not worry about Tiffany. She is just a means to an end. You are the one I want, Sarah. You know that. Once I get Mom's money, we are set. She is fading fast, baby. It will not be long now." The video then transitioned to crystal clear images of his text messages to Sarah, which I had painstakingly captured and enlarged. "Counting the minutes till I can be with you, my love. This charade with Tiffany is almost over. Soon it will be just us and Mom's millions." Complete with little heart emojis. The silence in the room was absolute, save for Robert's ragged breathing. Tiffany's face was a mask of incandescent rage. Her eyes, those pale blue lasers, swiveled from the screen, blazing with fury, not at me, but at Robert. You lying, cheating sleazeball," she shrieked, her voice cracking. She leaped up from the sofa, forgetting me, forgetting Mr. Henderson, forgetting everything but the man who had apparently been playing her for a fool. "You were using me? All this time? You told me you loved me." Robert cowered. "Tiffany, it is not what it looks like." "Not what it looks like," she screamed. "It looks like you are a pathetic two-timing gold digger who was trying to scam his own mother and me." I pressed the stop button on the remote. The screen went dark. The sudden quiet was almost more shocking than Tiffany's outburst. She stood panting, her chest heaving, her perfectly applied makeup now streaked with angry tears. Robert looked utterly broken, his face buried in his hands. Mr. Henderson, his face a mottled red, was discreetly trying to gather his papers, edging towards the door. "I believe," I said, my voice cutting through the charged atmosphere, calm and clear, "that this meeting is over." I stood up, feeling taller, stronger than I had in years. "Robert, Tiffany, I want you out of my house. Now." My gaze was unwavering. "And I never want to see either of you again. Not near my home, not near me. If you attempt to contact me or trouble me in any way, these recordings, and others I have, will be distributed. To the police, for harassment, conspiracy to commit fraud, and unlawful surveillance. To Sarah, so she knows exactly what kind of man you are, Robert. And Tiffany," I turned to her, "perhaps your family and any future prospects might be interested in your methods." Tiffany, her face contorted with fury and humiliation, seemed to deflate. The fight went out of her. She realized, I think, that her meal ticket was not only worthless but also a liability. She shot Robert one last look of pure venom, grabbed her expensive handbag, and without another word stormed out of the house, slamming the front door so hard the windows rattled. Robert slowly raised his head. His face was ashen, his eyes filled with a mixture of shame and disbelief. He opened his mouth as if to speak, then closed it again. He looked like a child, a lost, naughty child, but I felt no pity, only a vast, weary emptiness where my love for him used to be. He mumbled something incoherent, an apology perhaps. Then, head bowed, he slunk out after Tiffany, a man utterly defeated. Mr. Henderson, who had managed to gather his briefcase, offered me a hasty, stammered apology. "Madam Vance, I had no idea. I was misinformed." "Indeed you were, Mr. Henderson," I said coolly. "Perhaps you should vet your clients and their stories more carefully in the future." He nodded dumbly and practically fled. That very afternoon, I called a locksmith and had all the locks on my doors and windows changed. As the last old lock clattered into the locksmith's toolbox, I felt a profound sense of relief wash over me, so potent it was almost dizzying. But beneath the relief, there was a deep, lingering sadness. I had won, yes. But I had also lost my son, or rather, faced the truth that the son I loved had been gone for a very long time. Weeks turned into months. The grapevine, as it always does in small communities, brought me news. Tiffany had filed for divorce from Robert, citing infidelity and financial misrepresentation. She had apparently wasted no time in trying to salvage what she could, though I doubted there was much to salvage from Robert's finances. Robert himself became something of a pariah. His affair, his treatment of me, the story in its broad strokes got out. People who had once greeted him warmly now crossed the street to avoid him. His business, a small consulting firm, suffered. As for me, a surprising peace settled over my life. My African violets thrived under my care, their colors more vibrant than ever. My home, once violated, was again my sanctuary, filled with the comforting presence of Arthur's memory and my own quiet pursuits. I reconnected with old friends I had neglected during Robert and Tiffany's unsettling reign. I joined a book club at the local library and even started volunteering there twice a week, reading stories to children. It was a joy to see their small faces light up at the tales of faraway lands and talking animals. The community, those who knew parts of the story, treated me with a newfound respect, not as a frail old woman, but as someone of quiet strength, of hidden depths. Sometimes I would look at the bookshelf where I had found that first hateful camera. Now, in its place, nestled between Bleak House and David Copperfield, was a small framed photograph of Arthur and me taken on our 25th anniversary. We were smiling, his arm around my shoulders. The cameras, those instruments of betrayal and deceit, had ironically become my tools of liberation. I had reclaimed my home, my life, and most importantly, my peace of mind. I learned a hard lesson, that trust can be shattered by those we hold dearest. But I also learned that within even the quietest heart, there can reside immense strength. And that intelligence and a refusal to be victimized are powerful weapons. My worth was not, and never had been, defined by my son's perception of me, or by Tiffany's greed. It was defined by my own resilience, my integrity, and the quiet dignity with which I chose to live my life. I had not just survived their malicious plot, I had triumphed on my own terms, protecting not some imaginary fortune, but my very real and very precious independence. And in doing so, I had, in a way, honored Arthur's deepest wish for me. Thank you so much for listening to my story. It was a difficult time, but I hope it shows that even when things seem darkest, there is always a way to find your strength. If you enjoyed this story, or if it resonated with you, please give it a like and consider subscribing to our channel for more stories like this one. We love hearing from you, so please share your thoughts in the comments below. What part of the story surprised you the most? We have many other stories for you to watch, and we hope to see you again in our next video. Goodbye for now.